Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast, is brought to you by, well, you. If you want to learn how to support our show, go to patreon.com/laststandmedia. Greetings and salutations. Welcome back to Sacred Symbols Plus, a PlayStation podcast supplement. My name is Colin Moriarty. Today I'm joined by a very special guest, Melonie Mack. I have her written down here. Streamer, YouTuber, gamer, commentator, Tomb Raider fan.
Yes.
Yeah.
Lots of things.
Yeah. An athlete, or like, what do you call person who works out?
The person who goes to the gym and tries not to be a skinny fat gamer.
Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough. I have one of my rooms in my house is just like my elliptical, my fiance's workout bike, and a bunch of weights. So because I never leave the house, so I'd just be roly poly if I didn't get in there every day.
Right. And I feel like the older we get, because I'm 35, so it's like then you start to have your metabolism working against you. And I realize, hey, I got to do something, or I'm going to be a gamer slob. I'm not trying to be the stereotype anymore.
Yeah. What's this about the butter?
Butter.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's funny because I do a lot of little short form videos on TikTok, but I'll post them on other platforms as well, of hot takes while eating butter. And it started out as kind of a joke that I was making whenever I was talking about okay, yeah, people need to stop glorifying mental illness and this, that. And then it was kind of like my little joke about feminism too, because I threw that in there while I was eating butter. And the joke was that, oh, she's talking about mental illness while she's in her car eating butter. And it kind of took off. A lot more people either were really mad about that, me eating butter for some reason, or they want to just see more. And so it's kind of been a thing now. I just do hot takes while I'm eating butter.
It's interesting. I was looking at your social media feeds. You have a ton of followers. I'm not even on any of these platforms. I'm on Instagram and I try to be active on there, but it's just... Right. It's too hard for me to remember to go on there. I'm very much on Twitter, although I don't use Twitter anymore. I just read it.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And that's enough for me. That's enough chaos.
Hey, that's honestly a good thing. So, because it's a lot of negativity there, a lot of stuff. But I do quite enjoy trolling. So it can be fun, but it can also just not be good at the same time.
Yeah, you're like my friend Michael Malice. That's all he does on Twitter is just fuck with people because I understand getting use out of it, but I'm not built like that. I don't want to fight with anyone.
And I don't blame you. I respect it. But for those of us who like to troll, it can be a really good time, especially for people who can't detect jokes or sarcasm, like the perpetually offended. Man, their anger just fuels us more to want to keep trolling. It's a good time.
So it's funny, Melonie, the audience wouldn't know this until I'm telling them, but I wanted to have you on a couple of months ago to talk about your career and politics and all those kinds of things. And we're going to get there. But and you were on a list of people I needed to reach back out to. And when this Tomb Raider stuff happened last week, I was like, oh, this is the perfect marriage. Because what I've learned about you from following you on Twitter is that you're really into Tomb Raider.
Oh,
and
yeah.
I was thinking about this. It's strange because Tomb Raider has been popular since I was in middle school. But I don't think I've ever met anyone that was a Tomb Raider super fan. I don't think I've ever picked anyone's brain about the series in my entire life. And that's so strange because I've been in the industry for so long. And so I feel like this is a good time to ask you about Tomb Raider. Of course, started in 1996. Core design no longer exists.
Right.
What's your history with this series? Why are you so passionate about it? For people that don't know, by the way, it's because we broke this stuff on Sacred Symbols last week about the new game. And of course, there's also the hullabaloo around the MGM movie MGM losing the license. So what's your history with this franchise?
Oh, man, I've been a big Tomb Raider fan since the 90s. Just like when I first saw Lara Croft, I just thought she was awesome. I have this life-size Lara Croft right here, which her head's cut off. But and my statues, my collection on display. But I'm a big classic Tomb Raider fan. That's what I grew up with. And it was the whole power fantasy of Lara Croft that was just very appealing to me. And I think that aside from that, which is a cool part of her character and all that, but aside from that, it was just so much of the story being told through the gameplay itself and actually feeling like an adventure that made it a lot of fun. So I grew up with it. It's always been a huge part of my life, and stuck with the series, and constantly have hoped to see, like, once studios were changed and Crystal Dynamics got a hold of things, even with Legend, I had a lot of issues with it ever since then. Because even though when you look at Legend, for example, Legend Anniversary and Underworld, which aesthetically still have like a, an old school Tomb Raider vibe in terms of look, the gameplay was just so watered down and kind of like play school Tomb Raider, I call it. And then you got the reboot with this, which is something entirely different. And so I've held on to hope for so long that they would go back to the roots of things, but now I'm kind of jaded, and I don't think that's going to happen.
Yeah, I do wonder what will happen with the franchise. Generally speaking, they're clearly working on a new game, and we know Crystal Dynamics is doing that game. We know Crystal Dynamics and the franchise are moving from Square to Embracer, which is interesting. Yeah, I wanted to ask you about that. Like, what is quintessential Tomb Raider to you? Because it does seem like the franchise changes quite a bit. I jumped in, I remember Christmas 1998 it was Christmas 1997, I think it was. I got Tomb Raider 2.
Okay, Tomb Raider 2, yeah.
And that was when I jumped into the franchise, and I liked it. It was a little too complicated for me. I'm not a puzzle solver. I'm not very good at puzzles. Like, I don't, anything that, whenever I reach anything in a game where they're like, you have to try to like think about this, and I'm like, I don't want to do that. I want to like shoot things, and so Tomb Raider never really vibed with me, and actually as much as I would have liked it to. And then the Crystal Dynamics Tomb Raider, when it kind of embraced Uncharted, was more my speed because it was a little less puzzle solvy. But I'm wondering, to you as a Tomb Raider super fan, who cares what I think? I don't know anything about Tomb Raider. What is quintessential Tomb Raider to you?
Yeah, well, for me, what really makes Tomb Raider is, I mean, you got two elements here in terms of gameplay, and then you got Lara Croft. Okay, so with Lara Croft, the fundamentals of her character is that she's a rebel. She's very morally gray. She wasn't created to be some sort of hero, which that's something that they've tried to change with her character since Crystal Dynamics took over. But she did what she wanted out of just the thrill of it. And, I could go really deep into this, but just kind of to keep it from nerding out too much. She rebelled against her parents. They had an arranged marriage for her. She wanted to live a life of adventure instead, and they disowned her as a result. So everything about her character was just very rebellious, very, I do what I want because I want to, collecting artifacts and stuff like that. Her intentions weren't to save the world. It was she wanted that artifact. And sometimes that also saved the world, but her interest was top priority. So I think you need a larger than life Lara Croft. I think the exaggerated proportions, all that kind of stuff are pivotal for her character because she's supposed to be a power fantasy. She's not supposed to be a relatable, oh, she just like me type character. You're supposed to look at her and say, whoa, this is a larger than life, powerful woman here. Just like you'd see someone like Doom Guy. You don't want to relate to Doom Guy. You want to you need, like, Lara Croft, old school Lara Croft is my gym motivation. I don't want to have a character that's, oh, okay, she's just like me. No, I want to strive to be as much like this power fantasy as possible. So that's part of it. And then when it comes to gameplay, I mean, the fundamentals are you've got puzzles, you've got exploration, you need like isolated adventure. That's why I think having the headset and having characters tell Lara what to do and all this just completely breaks the immersion of it. You want to be isolated in these almost scary tombs and environments. There's times where classic Tomb Raider felt like a horror game because you didn't know what you were going to run into at any corner. You need fantastical elements, statues coming to life, dinosaurs, monsters, creatures like that. Puzzles, traps, collectibles that help you progress, like keys, things that you need to find. And you need to use your brain. You need to think. The actual combat itself was supplemental to everything else. It was never supposed to be the main part of the game. First and foremost, Tomb Raider is supposed to be an adventure before anything else. So you definitely don't have that now. Now, like you said, it is more of like an Uncharted type. It is more action focused and story focused and drama. And this is another thing that I really don't like is when they put so much focus on Lara's personal life, because what the classics established was that Lara was a rebellious character in her personal life. She gave that up for adventure. Adventure was her personal life. So I feel like Crystal Dynamics is just more focused on a dramatic experience with Lara Croft and beating her down and traumatizing her and all this, and that they've completely lost sight of what Tomb Raider is supposed to be.
It's interesting too, because I remember when I was at IGN, one of the big, I think it was the first Tomb Raider reboot, or maybe it was the sequel, when people were really upset about how gruesomely she dies. And I'm like,
Right.
well, why does that matter? Like, why do you want to coddle Lara Croft so badly?
Right.
It's very strange to me, because I always kind of took her that way too. Like, she knows she has big tits. She knows she's wearing a revealing shirt. She knows, like, she gets it. And she's
right. Exactly.
So, yeah.
But yeah, I think that the gruesome deaths, that's always been a part of the series. So I do feel like that was kind of a dumb thing to nitpick with them there. With what I don't personally consider that to be a problem from Crystal Dynamics, because that's always been a staple.
Yeah, I personally, that's how I kind of remembered it too. I was like, I thought that this game was supposed to be like consequential in some way. It was supposed to be heavy in some way, not necessarily in story, but just in intent.
Right.
So do you think, do you have a developer in mind that you would want to make a Tomb Raider game in the future? Obviously, it's going to be Crystal. Obviously, it's going to Embracer. I mean, Embracer could load it into any of their developers, but what is there a team in mind that you would think be able to handle this well?
In a perfect world, I would say Capcom. Because I think, especially when it comes to like their nostalgic properties, things that have been around a while, like Resident Evil, and Devil May Cry, like they've been killing it lately and doing an amazing job with. Even if you look at something like Resident Evil, which is still has still changed a lot of things and been modernized and all that kind of stuff, but they've, in my opinion, kept the heart of it and kept the fundamentals intact. So I think if it were to be like my dream studio that would take over Tomb Raider, I think Capcom would do a good job at that balance between, okay, creating new stuff and making it modern for the times for people who want to see that, but also retaining the heart of the franchise.
Yeah, that's actually a great answer, because when you were discussing, you were like finding keys and things to progress, isolated areas, silence, all those kinds of things. I'm like, well, that's Resident Evil. I mean, at least to me, that's old Resident Evil.
Oh yeah.
With rare exception, maybe you'll have a radio or an internet connection, but yeah, generally speaking, I think Capcom is going through a wonderful renaissance right now. I think Square Enix releasing Tomb Raider and Crystal, they have so much against. It's so funny because you can tell now that they had, after Avengers, they're like, we can't do this anymore, and then they hawked them out to Microsoft, basically, to make Perfect Dark. They're like, you got to go make some money and just be done. We're done with you. So very interesting. I will be fascinated to see if we go along based on what I was leaked, or if that. My suspicion is that was just for something to play with, to cast Lara. But to your point about the body image stuff, I find your take fascinating, because I noticed this, although I don't know if it would be in a casting call. They didn't describe her as like buxom or, it was just like, we want this Rosamund Pike type characters. And so you're more of the line of the mind that, and I like your reference to Doom Guy, like that is part of who she is. Like she is the hot buxom chick. And so talk to me about that and how it's been watching Lara kind of be reversed into something else.
Oh, I think that myself and a whole lot of other classic fans haven't liked that direction that they've gone with, because when it comes to, and especially during these times now, with woke stuff hitting all of the gaming properties and all that, we're not seeing power fantasies for women that often. And Lara Croft was that. And when you look at like a power fantasy for men, ultra buff, looks super strong, all this kind of stuff. Well, part of like a power fantasy for a woman would to be also to focus on those hyper feminine features, which would be the big bust, the like really curvy body type. And so it's very disappointing, and it's not doing what they think it's doing to make her more normal looking, more girl next door looking. They want to, it seems like they're trying to appeal more to women and all that, but it just completely takes away okay, so we don't get power fantasy characters. Like, I don't want to play a game as somebody who has a body type that's similar to mine. I mean, maybe some game if I want a more grounded game, but Tomb Raider wasn't a grounded series. So when I'm playing something that is more, okay, you got your main character who's doing these really amazing acrobatic feats and fighting dinosaurs or this or that, then yeah, I want her to look super powerful. I want her to be my gym motivation. And so it's disappointing. And so you just, I'm when I'm at the gym and I'm trying to get those extra reps in, I'm not thinking about reboot Lara Croft. Like, she's just, I'm thinking about classic Lara pushing boulders and okay, I got to get those extra couple reps in. Like, just imagine Lara pushing a boulder. So it's just sad. It's sad for a lot of women and who play video games and stuff to not really have the power fantasy characters like we used to.
That's really interesting. I want to talk about that in a second because I want to segue at some point into your presence in the industry as a woman and all of this, because I find you really different than a lot of other people, and I want to delve more into that. But I always found a contradiction with Lara when they kind of, with 2013's Tomb Raider, desexualized her in a way. She was still cute, she was still hot, whatever, but it was right. Different. And there was a contradiction there for me where it was like, well, why can't she look like that and also be really smart and also know history and archaeology and also be daring? It's almost like, yeah, that's an archetype, but you're kind of removing what was cool about it and sexualizing her in the process because you're removing all the other stuff about her that made her cool. So it was a contradiction to me. And it never really made a whole lot of sense why you would do that.
And it's funny because when you actually, when it comes to like Rule 34 and all of that kind of stuff, they make it, to my understanding, more for Reboot Lara than they do. They got more material to work with Reboot Lara, and because they want to make her so much more, they want you to feel sorry for her and all that kind of stuff. And then a lot of her dialogue is just a bunch of like, she sounds scared. She sounds like she's making a bunch of moaning sounds and stuff. And so they actually have more to work with for the Rule 34 content. It just, they're doing what they don't want to do, but they're still doing it. So that's the same thing with them, supposedly, with the rumor of them making Lara Croft a lesbian in the next game, is they're not doing this for her gay fans, because first of all, what a lot of the gay fans have been saying, the gay male fans that she's had, which is a lot, is that that makes her less relatable to them because they're not attracted to women. So it's like making Lara gay doesn't make her more relatable to them because of that reason. But also, more than anything, when you think about like a straight fantasy, that feeds more into that. And so when you saw like a bunch of the comments from GameSpot and stuff, when they shared that, the people who were more okay with it, more than her actual fans, were just some straight dudes who were like, oh yeah, that sounds great. Sign me up. So they're not doing what they're trying to do. And it's funny when they do things in the name of being woke and in the name of trying to check some check boxes here. And it's like, it's not working. It's not doing what they wanted it to do.
Yeah, I do wonder sometimes I say this a lot about content too, when there's just content that's very preachy or whatever the case might be, very, I don't know, self-congratulatory, anything like that. It's like, who are you making this for?
Yeah.
And if not for the fans, it's a little confusing. It would be like me saying we're an Xbox podcast now. We don't do what we used to do anymore. Sorry. It's the expectations have changed.
Right.
I can understand that frustration. Let me ask you this. Do you think, because this is something I struggle with the franchises I love, Castlevania, Mega Man, some of the other stuff. Should it just die? Should Tomb Raider just be gone now? I mean, like, here's, Melonie, I got to share this with you, and the audience knows this about me, is that I feel like we are hanging around things too long. Like, why? Oh, yeah. There's always an expectation of something else. Nothing can be left alone. The Last of Us can't be left alone. Horizon can't be left alone. You can't leave anything alone. We're probably going to get another Uncharted and all this shit.
Right.
Is it time to let Tomb Raider go, or can we not leave it like this? Because I do feel like that might be the argument. Like, if you want to go, you got to leave it on something really great first, and then you go.
Here's how, in a perfect scenario, or maybe not necessarily perfect, but a good scenario would be to release remasters of the classic titles, because right now they don't run that well on Steam. The ports don't. So give us actual faithful remasters of at least the first 3 games, but if not the entire classic library. Give us faithful remasters of that, then go ahead and either let it die, or if they want to actually be faithful to it and try to go back to the roots, try to keep giving us Tomb Raider adventures. But I don't think that with the hands that it's in now, that's possible. And I don't think there's really, I think at this case, the best possible scenario would be those remasters and then let it go from there, or at least wait another 10, 20 years before trying to revive it.
Yeah, I'm of the mind that Konami and Capcom and others have been really doing this a lot, but the collections act as good telemetry too. Like if there's interest in Tomb Raider, in old Tomb Raider, those collections will do well. It's how Sony used to seed, Sly Cooper collection would seed Sly 4 and all these kinds of things. No one really looks at it that way anymore. And if you take the long view, which I imagine Embracer probably would, it would be good to go back to those core games, those core design games,
right,
and get those back out there. I think that would be interesting. And as far as running Tomb Raider or anything into the ground, what sucks is when a new idea is come up with and then they kind of shoehorn it into what already exists, because it's what you're explaining with Lara. The character you've come up with, or the Crystal Dynamics has come up with beginning in 2013, it's a different game. So like, why not just make a different game? Why not make, something else? I think that's okay. I wish that the audiences were more embracive of that, pardon the pun with Embracer, but that they would embrace these things more and be like, yeah, fuck it. It's just some other why can't there be another female adventurer?
Exactly. And it's like, it's because they want to capitalize on the classic fans. They want our money, but they don't want to actually give us what we want. They want to make something new. And what we've seen with Crystal Dynamics is that they've constantly like, okay, well, this is just her origin era. She's gonna become the Tomb Raider. Just give it time. When they've never actually, to what it appears like, never actually intended on giving us classic Lara Croft again, or a classic Tomb Raider experience, but they've just been telling us what we want to hear. Or how many times do we see like the dual pistols teased, even in the last movie? Oh, at the very end, she's got her dual pistols. Don't use them throughout the whole movie or in the later games, but they want to tease them so that the fans will still keep giving them money in hope that we're going to get what we want eventually. And so at this point, it's just like, just admit you're doing something completely new. Ideally, you wouldn't use the name at all, but just either stick with doing something completely new and embrace that and stop leading us on as fans, or go back to the roots, one or the other. But you can't just do something completely new and then sprinkle in little Easter eggs and teases here and there. That isn't going to work for long.
That's how it felt. That's how the Uncharted movie felt a little bit to me. It was good. I thought it was actually surprisingly good. I had no expectations for it, but the end, I won't spoil it for people, but the end, it's like, oh my God, guys, like you really were holding on to all the video game stuff until right now. And
I hate when that happens. See, I didn't see the Uncharted movie because I don't know. I thought the casting seemed terrible.
It's peculiar for sure.
I might go ahead and give it a shot, but that does not surprise me at all, though, because that's what we keep seeing with Tomb Raider constantly, is just, a completely inaccurate portrayal of Lara Croft and the games in general, the gameplay, all that kind of stuff. But then, okay, at the very end, let's leave a little tease there so that we'll still keep getting the fans money, because they're going to hope for something in the future.
Yeah, it's also just strange to, and again, like you said, it's just really shallow marketing and trying to get people's attention. But with the Uncharted film, which is on Netflix, by the way, now, so everyone can watch it out there if you're on Netflix without having to pay for it. But I went and saw it in the theater, so you didn't have to.
Yeah.
But the movie is ostensibly about how Drake and Sully meet. And so when you hear that, it's like, oh, Uncharted 3.
Right.
And they're like, no, this is a totally different thing that has nothing to do with Uncharted 3. And it's like, well, we already have the Drake and Sully origin story. It already exists.
That's the same thing with Tomb Raider, because they're like, this is Lara Croft's origin story. And it's like, oh, wait, are we just going to pretend like Tomb Raider Last Revelation, where we played as a 16-year-old Lara Croft, didn't happen? So all right.
It's very weird. Like new ideas, new characters. Then you don't have to rewrite and retcon over and over again.
Exactly.
You had brought up the films. I have not seen the Tomb Raider films. How do you feel about this whole apparent bidding war going on for Tomb Raider? Do you want more films too, or are you happy with just maybe a game?
I am relieved that the sequel to the last movie isn't going to happen now, because it's already passed different hands with directors and stuff. They've said, oh, we're just going to, keep following the reboot stories. When it comes to movies of, with Tomb Raider or anything like that, video games in general, I kind of want to see something new. I don't want to see them just tell the game story, because we already have the game for that. And if they try to tell a story from the game, probably it's going to be worse, especially if it's from like the classic era and all that kind of stuff. So in this situation, I actually do like that the first two Tomb Raider movies with Angelina Jolie, how they told their own stories. I don't think those were amazing movies by any means, but I did like that. Okay, the beauty of Lara Croft is that she's established as an adventurer, and you have a lot of material to work with. Like, oh, we can create a whole new adventure without having to really change the character and without really having to change anything, because this is just a separate adventure she goes on. So I think that when it comes to a movie, if they were to just give us a new adventure without diving too much into Lara's character and giving her an emotional story or anything like that, it could be really fun. Like, how cool would it be to see, an action hero woman dressed up like Lara Croft shooting T-Rexes and stuff like that, if they actually embrace the fantastical elements and things. So that could be cool. But do I think that Hollywood is going to deliver something like that? No, whatever is next is probably going to be ruined, I imagine. So I'd rather them not even do it at all.
Have you noticed that the compliment or I guess the backhanded compliment that things get when people want to continue them is that, like, we should make it grounded.
I hate
let's make it grounded. And I like groundedness. Last of Us, grounded.
Right.
But when I think about Mega Man or something, one of my favorites, I'm like, no, I want camp.
Right.
I want total camp. If it's a G.I. Joe game, it's got to be campy. Like, it can't be serious. I don't know. You and I are of the same mind here with these.
Right. Yeah. You ruined Tomb Raider when you try to make it grounded, because Tomb Raider was larger than life. And that's how that was part of the appeal with Lara Croft, with the setting, with the adventures she goes on, everything. And so making it grounded just completely doesn't make it Tomb Raider anymore in my eyes.
Fair enough. All right. I'm going to let everyone else know now, because I want to be mindful of some of you don't want to hear more political conversation. This conversation will now become more political. So tap out if you don't want to listen to it, but I'm sure most of you will stay tuned anyway. So Melonie, I don't remember how I became familiar with you. It was a few years ago, I want to say.
Right.
And I don't follow very many people on Twitter. I follow people very intentionally on Twitter. And what was interesting about you was that there's this notion of the girl gamer, right? Or the e-girl and all this kind of stuff. And out of respect for my now fiance, and out of respect for, like, I'm not going to follow these people, even if I'm friends with some of them. Like, I'm friends with a few of them. I have to mute them.
I get it.
What I dig about your persona online is that it's PG. Mm-hmm. It seems to be a lot about nutrition and health and working out. Uh-huh. God. I mean, Christianity is a part of your life.
Yeah.
And all these kinds of things. I find it different. And that's what's so interesting about you. It's not, you stand out compared to a lot of other people by not, in my opinion, capitulating to the expectations. And so I'm wondering where you kind of, or how you kind of got into this space, and how you've decided to kind of model yourself in a more appropriate way, I guess. Because I feel bad for people like you. I feel bad for my fiance Micah too, who's a really hardcore Xbox gamer actually, and Call of Duty and Gears and nerdy Switch games or whatever. And when she was doing her stuff, like, the expectations are like, where's your cleavage?
Right.
And I'm like, and by not doing that, you probably hurt yourself, but you're not just another one. And I don't know. I think that's fascinating and shows a lot of restraint. So talk to me about that.
I think, it's kind of a tough thing, but for me, I kind of dove into all this content creation in the gaming space way back. It's been like 13 years since I started my YouTube channel talking about games, all that kind of stuff. And so it's been a learning experience for me. When I started, I was one of the first girl content creators in the gaming space. And so there was no, and especially back then, it was more like, hey, you know, we really wanted to prove ourselves. Hey, we're legit gamers. Like, so back then it was actually more looked down on for the girls who were like showing cleavage and that kind of stuff. Right. So I'm used to that. I grew up being a tomboy. I have two brothers, and I was always just like, you know, played video games with them, played football with our friends and all that kind of stuff. And so for me, I think it just kind of fits into how I normally am around friends and stuff, is I just kind of blend in as like one of the guys. I don't want that type of attention from like my friends and that kind of stuff, like the to be more revealing or anything like that. But I don't know. It's just that's just been kind of the main focus for me, has been what I do, what I like, and staying true to myself. And I know that when it comes to, you know, once there started to be more of a rise of, you know, the OnlyFans modeling and that kind of stuff that's making a lot more money for a lot of streamer girls and stuff like that, that's just never been something that I would be comfortable or happy with myself doing. And if I were to go that route, I would be completely selling out from it would be against my character, against what I would want to do, against how I wouldn't enjoy it. And honestly, I don't even think a lot of the girls who do that even enjoy it, but they feel like they have to because, hey, that's what's making them more money. And that's just where it is in the space in general, because I mean, let's just face it, most hardcore gamers are dudes. They'll try to say statistically that, oh, like over 50% are women, but that's when you're counting mobile games and Candy Crush and all that. But actual, you know, most of your AAA games and all that, it's very predominantly male audience. And so for that reason, naturally, guys are going to thrive more in the gaming content creation space because it's just like they're more relatable to their audiences. So in that kind of situation, for a girl to really try to, okay, how can I get more viewers? How can I do this? How can I do that? And I think that's kind of been that loophole that they've found down the road of content creation as a girl, where normally it used to be when it started, hey, I'm a gamer just like you guys. I'm like one of you guys. It's how it used to be. And then now it's gone from them just embracing that. I don't want to say easy way out, because they're still like having to. I feel like I don't envy that at all. I feel like it wouldn't be worth it. And I feel like that would be a lot to have to put yourself through emotionally and all that kind of stuff to even want to do that. So
I totally
it's a sacrifice.
I totally agree. I mean, that's my outside view of it as well, is like that it's not worth the short-term gain is not worth you can't erase this. I was talking to someone recently. It's kind of a shitty example, but Mia Khalifa, I think her name is, the porn star that became like a commentator. It's sad to watch because she pops up on my feed every once in a while, and it's like she's trying new things or getting into sports and all these things, but people only know her and only care about her for that one thing. And she did that to herself. Like that's like kind of the reality, is that no matter where she goes for the rest of her life, that is going to follow her, and that expectation will follow her, and people are always going to remind her of it. And I don't know why you would put yourself in that position. And I know she's shown great regret about that, which is why I think people should pay close attention to that stuff as well. I think, and I also say that I think a lot of the women streamers that do that kind of stuff are hurting all the other women streamers. I'm surprised there's not more of a pushback on that, because that sets different expectations. And I hate to admit this, to articulate this, but when I see like, you know, a hot streamer that has no clothes on, you see she has a lot of views. I don't take that especially seriously. When I see a female streamer, a female player of games, YouTuber, podcaster that has good numbers, and she's wearing a sweater, or she's just dressed like a normal person and all that, or she's not on video, I take that way more seriously, because that was way harder to do. That was doubly as hard to do as it was for me to do it. And and so that's good stuff. And I'm glad that you're out there at least encouraging, I guess, better behavior.
For sure. I mean, it's tough because like then there's always some sort of pushback with that from the other side too, is that, whenever you do try to say, hey, I don't like that all these so many other girls in this space feel like they have to do that, because then that does make things worse for those of us who don't, because then we've got people in our DM requests and stuff. Where's your OnlyFans link? Where's this? Why aren't you doing this? Why aren't you doing that? So it does make things harder for us in that regard. But then if we speak out about it, we're called a pick me or something like that. Or then you have the other side of things to where, because even though I consider myself pretty modest, but still I'm a girl. I like to be cute and stuff like that. There'll be some guys who will act like I'm, dressed incredibly inappropriate for wearing a tank top. It's just there. I feel like in some cases you can't win, because some people will still treat me like I'm portraying myself in that way when, hey, I still want to, present myself cute, but I don't want to, go that excessive route with like the provocative type content. I don't think in any situation, like even when I'm sharing, selfie at a gym wearing like gym attire that is, can be more revealing to showcase my gains and all that. I don't ever feel like I'm portraying myself in a seductive manner, even in those kind of cases, or provocative type manner. But, the backlash from both sides can be, it's either, okay, where's your OnlyFans link? Why aren't you creating this kind of content? Could that for me? Or there's the other side of, oh, well, you're still not modest enough. So
dude, I can't. I don't know. I'm not trying to make fun of anyone, because people can say the same thing about paying for Patreon, I guess. But I can't believe anyone would pay for an OnlyFans. It's like, Google.
I know.
Boobs. I mean, I don't know what you want. Like, what are you doing? I don't know what that's all about.
I think a lot of it is they just want to feel like they have some sort of personal relationship with the person that they are paying to see their boobs for. So it makes it more personal. But honestly, that's that's dangerous, I think, for creators in general. So even if, it's there's some psychos out there. And so once some of these girls will do stuff like that, and then it's revealed that, oh, they have a boyfriend or a husband or this or that, like you don't, there's been scary stories from, I don't know so much about, I think maybe one case in the gaming space, but I know with at least, I've seen these murder mystery shows about cam models and stuff.
Yeah. Ewu. I've been watching that channel Ewu on YouTube, and it's all about these weird online murder mysteries. And it's scary, because I've dealt with some psychos too. I've told people have threatened to kill me. People have threatened to rape me. People have threatened me that like, I know you're going to this show, I'll see you there kind of shit. And it's weird. I think it happened in kind of a different era. This was when I was at IGN, where it was a little scary, but I never even told anyone, or reported it, or told like my editors. And maybe I should have, because maybe I passively contributed to the toxicity and saying like, oh, these people will just leave me alone. They probably just moved on to someone else. So I'm sorry that anyone has to deal with that, but it's especially shitty for women, and the double-edged sword of like exposing yourself or doing what you feel like you need to do in that expectation game and the toxicity it feeds. And I think it's weird. Doesn't it say something weird about you if you have to hide that you have a significant other to successfully conduct your business? It's very weird.
That is very weird. Yeah. So I just feel like whenever you kind of tread into that territory of, people following you for your body and selling your body to some degree or another, then you kind of walk into all those issues. And so that's something that I've never wanted to have to deal with. And a big reason why I don't do it. But also, like, I still, at the end of the day, it's just like money isn't everything. And if it got to a point to where whatever I do and my content creation isn't paying the bills anymore, I'd rather just go out and get a normal job than sell my body on the internet. Totally.
Respect. I mean, total respect for that. I don't think, listen, I believe everyone should be able to do whatever they want within total reason, libertarian reason, right?
Yeah.
Do unto others kind of thing.
Right.
But really think about the repercussions Like you cannot erase these things. People will always remember it. It's people got to be very careful in all things.
I don't care how many people, any kind of backlash I get for saying this kind of stuff, but there is nothing empowering about selling your body. Nothing. And I feel like that is a terrible, toxic thing that has been spread among society, and now it's just like you're treated as being mean or a pick-me or wrong for speaking out against how unhealthy it is mentally and, obviously with safety reasons and stuff like that for sex workers. It's not it's not an ideal industry by any means. And to be glorifying it and encouraging these young girls that are, as soon as they turn 18 or starting these OnlyFans, it's predatory and it's wrong. Because while I do think that people should have the right to do that, and, they don't need my approval, do what you want, but I am not ever going to pretend like it's healthy because I don't think it is.
No, society is, and I say this as a secular person, really, like society, I think has just gotten totally perverse. In all ways and in all sorts of ways, the way, children look much more like adults now, the way expectations for children and teenagers expands. They're with people that are too old. They're watching things that are bad. These are bad influences have always been there. But I think about like when I'm 37, when I was like 12, pouring through my friend's dad's Playboy magazines with him or whatever.
Right.
It was like, this was a very isolated, forbidden thing. It wasn't something that you like bragged about. Maybe you like told your friends you saw it. And then I think about the girls and the women in the magazines, and there would be like features where like they would, hot girls of UCLA or whatever, but it's 1995. And this is like a passing thing in this chick's life to get some money, and no one's going to know. And it's just so different now. I just don't think people have accounted for that. And it's screwing everything up. And I feel really bad for young girls. I mean, I'm reading, it's kind of unrelated, but I'm reading Abigail Shire's book about transgender girls and her argument is that it's a social contagion. And you just, in reading all the things, it's like that, God, everything just seems to target this group of people, like it and fucks them up. Yep. And it's sad. It's just really sad. Oh gosh.
And I've gotten some backlash because of making a post about growing up being a tomboy and how if society was the way it is now back then when I was a little kid, people would have convinced me that I was a boy in a girl's body. So getting on that topic and so I think that it is very dangerous to be encouraging children in this kind of a child cannot consent to something like that. And so any type of like anything that's going to stop their puberty, anything that's going to, or even just encouraging them in general in that area. I think first and foremost, what people kind of lose sight on is back in the day, I remember it was more taught to like love yourself and appreciate yourself for who you are. And we should be preaching that above anything else. And then if as an adult, they do what they need to do to feel happy and confident and all that kind of stuff, great. But it's at the point now to where society has just been, there's so many ideals and things that have been forced on us to where if we have any sort of nuanced opinion on it, we are treated as these evil people or like racist, sexist, homophobic, this or that. And so that was another one of those topics for me that hit close to home, being a tomboy growing up and all that. And so it's like, no, okay, I can still be supportive of the transgender community and them doing what they want to do for themselves. But I think when it comes to kids and stuff, encouraging them, hey, learn to accept who you are and how you were born should always be the first priority, in my opinion. So it's just another
totally
one
agree.
Of those.
You're made as you are.
Yeah.
Also, what does the label really matter? And I agree, like, because there's a lot of conflation with the transgender community where it's like, oh, you don't support trans people if you feel this way. And I'm like, no. Well, here I want to be very specific. I don't believe most of you are trans. That's what I'm saying. Yep. I believe many of you are being taken advantage of. Yep. And manipulated, and there's been trans people throughout time, of course. Yeah, sure. But 4,000% increase in 10 years? I don't think so. No. So that's my fear. And people kind of just saying the line and putting it out there. I'm not going to participate in that. It doesn't mean I hate trans people. What I'm saying is that I think you guys are being manipulated. And it's sad and it's scary that you're allowing that to happen, because it's not an affirmative right. It's like, I was even though I'm conservative, very pro-gay marriage since I was young.
Right.
Because I just felt like that was a situation of liberty, individual liberty. You still can't explore that liberty in its entirety until you're an adult and understand the repercussions of your actions. So people like shoving puberty blockers down 10-year-olds' throats or whatever, that's fucking crazy. And I think that needs to be exposed and said. That doesn't mean I hate or think anything badly about trans people. It means that I don't think a lot of you are trans.
Exactly.
I don't know what else to say.
If you're to look at it at an ideal scenario here, when you look at a kid who, maybe isn't, super stereotypical, like super feminine or more on the masculine side of things, and then they're trying to figure themselves out as kids do. Wouldn't a perfect scenario be for that kid to embrace who they are instead of having to change it just to cope with life? That should be the goal, is to, embrace how you were born, embrace your body, embrace all of that, and learn to love that. Because that's the thing is the transgender community, they do have a lot of difficulties in their lives that come with being transgender, whether it come from society or even internally. Like it's something that they have to fight through, and it's tough. So you wouldn't want people to have those challenges if they can overcome it. But those who still do have those challenges, and those who try to go through life, hey, we can, love them and support their right to do what they need to do as adults to get through that. But that shouldn't be anything we should be encouraging, especially for children.
Totally. That was kind of the drawn line for me, and what I get concerned with in the games industry as far as kind of the propaganda about this stuff, because I'm like, I don't know about this. Like, it seems predatory and wrong. It's fucked up, I think, to conflate. This is why I think intersectionality is a disaster, because it's just all about grievance. That's basically the central point of intersectionality. And so you just find the grievance, even if they're not congruent with each other at all. In many ways, the trans issue especially hurts lesbian women who, if you read, they're the ones that are like really going against the trans movement bigger than anyone, because they're basically being erased and being told that they're fucking men, and so I totally agree with you. And I'm glad that in my little space on the internet, I can say, like, all are welcome. Everyone knows that. And people are born the way they are. For instance, one of my nephews is gay, and he's in middle school, and I knew since he was like a little kid. And I remember saying to my mom, like, he's gay, definitely gay, and, lo and behold, years later, he comes out. You're born that way. I just think that young minds are being manipulated by people they trust. And I don't want to be a part of it. That's it.
I agree.
Let me ask you a little bit about your Christianity. Now, I was born and raised Catholic. My family's hard. I'm Italian and Irish. My family's hardcore Catholic, but I consider myself, I consider myself an atheist for a long time. I don't really know that that's true. I consider myself culturally Catholic because I just think it's the oldest form of Christianity. You got to kind of buy into that a little bit, but it's not something I wear on my sleeve. I wasn't even confirmed. So I'm getting married, and I can't even get married in a Catholic church. What role does Christianity play in your life, and how has it helped you in your content creation and kind of to foment what I would imagine is a more positive community than I would imagine most communities are?
Right. It's been a journey because, I grew up in a Christian household. It's always been a huge part of my life, except for there was a few years there where I kind of went through my own rebellious stage, in my mid-20s, because I don't know. I just think sometimes you got to figure out stuff on your own. And so hindsight 2020, I'm glad I did, because there's one thing to be, okay, I was always taught this is how I grew up. And then I had to kind of, see what else was out there and kind of think outside the box a little bit. Because I was also homeschooled growing up. So I was very, very sheltered. And now I look back and I'm very grateful for the way that I grew up. I feel like there's a lot of stuff in public schools and
oh my god, my kids aren't going to public school.
Yeah.
There's no way.
If I end up having kids, if I have kids, I'm homeschooling 1,000%. But I think it's natural that people do go through rebellious phases. For most, it's during their teenage years, and for me, it was like more in my mid-20s, because I think since I had like a very sheltered upbringing, which now I think is great, but back then, back when I got a little older in my mid-20s and stuff, I was like, oh, you know what? I need to figure out life on my own, this, that, and the other. And so I first got into the gaming industry and stuff in my early 20s. And I noticed, just right away that a lot of people in the industry don't like Christians at all. I had,
no doubt.
I had to deal with a lot of people gossiping about me. I had to deal with a lot of, being pushed to do things that I wasn't comfortable doing to try to make it in the industry. When I had an internship at one point, and I was told, okay, well, you really need a network. You got to go to these clubs. Gaming after parties to network. And I was like, oh, I don't drink. I don't party. I don't do that kind of stuff. Like, I'm not comfortable with it. And I was just straight up told by, my bosses at that time, well, you're not going to have a chance to work up in the industry, and you're not going to have a chance to get full time with us and all that kind of stuff if you're not networking. And so then I felt like I had to do stuff that, was out of my comfort zone, like going to these clubs and things like that. And so it was the first time I ever went to a club was during that time. And so then like people would talk bad about me all the time. Every time that there was any sort of gossip about me, they always go for the religion, that for some reason that was where they attacked me the most. And so then in my mid-20s, I was like, I was sick of all that. I was sick and tired of constantly feeling like I was being judged for my faith and this, that, and the other. And then also I just kind of went through a rebellious phase against everything and wanted to kind of figure out life on my own. I went through a phase where I was just like walked away from my faith and was more on the agnostic side, as I called myself, kind of got a little more into the woke agenda kind of thing. I feel like that influenced me a bit. I never went like full send on that, but I was like, let me hear them out. Okay, I made a comment in one of my videos at that time, around that time, that, oh, I'm not a feminist. And people are like, oh, so you're not for equality and all this stuff, and you should look into it because feminism is all about equality. And so I was like, oh, maybe I should give it a chance. And so I tried.
Second wave feminism was all about equality, for sure.
Yeah. And so I thought, let me give this stuff a chance, because like I grew up being all very on the conservative side of things, very Christian, very conservative. Let me see what all this is about. And so, for, I don't know, a couple of years or so there, I gave that a shot, like that side kind of perspective and all that. And then, yeah, it just wasn't for me. I feel like I missed a lot of my old values. I missed a lot. I started seeing holes in the whole woke agenda and stuff, to where, hey, maybe this is a lot of self-righteousness and it's not actually caring about women. It's not actually caring about marginalized groups and this and that. Maybe, I started to see what felt like more people being self-righteous. And then I started thinking to myself, this is a religion. This whole like social justice and all that kind of stuff is a religion. So I felt like I replaced my previous religion with another one. Mm-hmm. And what I soon realized is that, oh, okay, people are getting ostracized for jokes they've made 10 years ago or even currently. You can't have fun. You can't make jokes. Can't make jokes about, women in the kitchen jokes or drivers. You can't make jokes about, pick on each other, anybody and everybody, without getting canceled, without getting your risk of getting your life ruined. And I thought, this isn't for me. This isn't fun. I don't like it. I started to feel like the corruption in society and then the whole like social justice movement just started to feel really corrupt. It started to feel like we've talked about just earlier with how I feel like kids are getting groomed into stuff. And, the more I explored that side of things, the more I realized I don't want this. It drew me more into back to Christianity again. And so, I got like a Bible again. I started reading my Bible again. I started praying again and got back into my faith. And I feel a lot more me. I feel a lot more true to how I've always been before. I feel like this is a lot more in line with my values. And so yeah, it's a huge part of my life now. And now I feel like my faith is stronger than ever. And I found out for myself. So it's been a journey.
Good. I'm glad that you found what's right for you. I think the industry is the cliquish industry is a bully, but it's totally a waning bully. It has no power. I mean, when it realized it had no power over me, it kind of started leaving me alone for the most part, which I think is really funny. Like I'm like, you're not, whatever you say or do is not going to hurt me. It's not happening. And have you been since kind of rediscovering that? I mean, has it been more difficult for you to navigate those mainstream lines in the
I lost a huge chunk of my connections, like my peers that were in the industry and people who acted like they were my friends after I got back into my faith and I started, sharing my own values more instead of just going along with the mainstream narrative and the approved narrative. I lost almost everybody, and it was really hard at first. But then I gained a lot more new friends who, keep it more real. And the thing is a lot of the other friends that I've made aren't even Christians and don't even totally agree with everything that I do, but they're not a part of this crazy woke movement, self-righteous movement that will ostracize anybody and everybody for any sort of disagreement or any sort of joke that they may have made or something like that. And so I feel like, sometimes when it feels like you're losing everything, you're actually gaining a lot more, and it was for the better. And now I feel like for the first time in a very long time with my content, with social media in general, I can be myself. I can I can make whatever jokes I want to make. I can share whatever opinions I want to make and not have to worry about, am I going to lose everybody? Am I going to lose everything? Because I already did. And now I'm like, I ain't got nothing to lose anymore. I've already been canceled. I got canceled around this time last year really bad for speaking out against mandates of certain medical mandates. And so yeah, I lost a lot of people when that happened. And I'm like, okay, well, a lot of my industry peers already hate me. I'm not going to be able to go to be sent by a lot of companies anymore to special events and get these certain sponsors and stuff. But at the end of the day, I'd rather be authentic and true to myself than that kind of stuff just isn't worth it. And I still have, I feel like my following has grown more and people appreciate the authenticity and they can see it a lot more now. But it is funny because some people who, I'm not going to say any names, but I just had the other day, one girl who was who I consider to be my friend. She quote tweeted one of my videos to try to call me out and all that kind of stuff. One of my little short joke videos, like, making a little dig at feminism. She did that to try to call me out and make me look bad. And then she's in the comments, like, gossiping about me with some of the replies saying, oh yeah, like, she's only sold out to this, like, conservative Christian image. She's doing that because she's selling out. And it's the total opposite, because I lost the opportunities that I otherwise had before a lot of that. And so I have grown more followers, but I just found it very odd to get that kind of response from a girl who started out in the industry much like I did, more on the conservative side, and now she has an OnlyFans. But I'm the one who's sold out.
Yeah, very cool. I mean, there's no happiness there. There's no fulfillment there, and I can be the first to identify that and realize that as well. And I think, you were saying something about feminism where everything's been bastardized. Like, I'm a feminist, I guess. If you're talking about first wave feminism was about breaking the wall down, and the second wave feminism was about gaining equality, and then third wave feminism was about punitive damage. And that's to me where I draw the line. And so it's like, I'm a feminist in the way that you should be able to do whatever you want. If you're a woman, you can do whatever you want. Cool. What more do you want? You know?
Exactly.
And then I see things with race relations where, and Micah's black, so we talk about this from time to time.
Right.
I brought up this Gallup poll. This is so interesting. I don't know if you've seen this. Gallup asks every year about race relations in the United States and then tracks it. And in 2001, 70% of black adults, 70% said race relations were good in the United States. So in 2000, and then 2001, and then 33% today. What happened? How is that possible?
This is it. The social justice movement has single-handedly manufactured racism, sexism, homophobia. They're bringing it all back. You're seeing like the rates of LGBT acceptance is lower now than it was in recent years before. It's because of all of these activists and the social justice movement that is demonizing people, ostracizing people, cry bullying, constantly preaching at everybody, the no fun zone, no jokes allowed, no this, no that, or no the other. And so it's pushed people into, having more, they're manufactured. They're either making it up where it doesn't exist, or they're fulfilling their own prophecy that they've created and their own issue they've created. And I think that even with myself, it's so funny to be called super conservative and to be called this and that, when compared to how things normally are, I'm a lot more in the middle. I think when it comes to, most super hyper conservative women, if I were to be super hyper conservative, I would, have a bunch of kids at my age and be married housewife right now. And I think when it comes to actual progressive or whatever you call it, I've always been career oriented. I've always been independent, all this kind of stuff. And so I do think it's really funny when the social justice movement tries to treat me like I'm some stuck in the 50s or something like that, because
like you're what do they call it, trad or whatever,
right? Like I'm a trad, and I'm just like, dude, because of the way that I am, I get both sides of the extreme. I'll get backlash from. The social justice side acts like I'm like this 1950s traditional woman, and then the other extreme is like, ew, gross, you have tattoos. You why don't you have babies yet? And all this stuff. And so I just feel like you can't win sometimes.
No, especially not on the internet. Everyone has something to say, and I totally understand that. And I'm really sympathetic to your fall from grace, as it were, because I went through a similar situation too. And and it's for different reasons, of course, but like I always say, I was the closest thing IGN ever saw to a Trump voter, and I'm not a Trump voter. That was enough for everyone to be like, oh no, like, because I'd say like, oh I'm from Long Island, my family are Trump voters, and like we voted for Trump and all that. I understand them. That was literally enough to light the fuse and be done. And so I look at these race relations stats just as an example, because I reflect on my podcast with my brother that we do every week about nostalgia. I'm like, am I crazy? And I know we're white guys, like we don't have the proper view, but didn't it seem less racist when we were kids? Like, didn't it just seem like it wasn't a thing anymore?
It's true though. It really was. And that's the thing too, is I also grew up in a military family. So, constantly going from military bases and stuff like that. And so you have like a mixed bag with the community that we would be around, and the friends that we'd make and all that kind of stuff. And man, back then it would just be like, we were always taught, look at everybody as a human being, don't judge them based on the color of their skin. And you're told that that's racist now. You're told that you're racist if you just view everybody the same. And it just boggles my mind, because I felt like, well, I didn't encounter any issues, and I didn't even see any issues of that firsthand, like racism, sexism, any of that really back then when we were kids, because we were just told to see each other as, the same. But I feel like racism especially is worse now than ever by the people who are trying to pretend like they're not racist, that are honestly the most racist people I've seen.
No, I hear the most racist shit out of people's mouths.
Yes.
With total impunity. Like, where I'm like, how is it possible that you're even allowed? How can you say this on the public record? Like, it's incredible. Like, don't you say this shit behind closed doors or something at least? And
I know.
And so I totally agree with you. And here's the thing, Melonie, maybe you've had the same revelation that I've had over time, which is I'm not going to let these people, and I mean like we used to call them politically correct, right? And by the way, I remember people used to make fun of like, that doesn't exist. Oh, okay. And so political correctness is like, I would love to go back to that era.
Yes.
That would be awesome. We could talk about like, we could talk about fucking affirmative action and like whatever.
Yeah.
And that would be quaint. But I do think that I have my own moral framework, and I'm not going to let anyone bully me out of it, because I think that they're just totally wrong about some things. I have changed my mind and my input on politically on certain things. I used to be more neoconservative when I was a teenager and into my 20s. I'm totally anti-war now. That was a huge mistake and totally silly.
Right.
But I'm not going to let people tell me that there's 50 genders. I'm not going to I'm not going to be bullied into thinking that we should be resegregated and equity and all of these kinds of things.
Yeah.
I'm going to be an egalitarian. I'm going to continue to believe in total equality for all, equal opportunity. Right. And and you can't do equal outcome. You just can't, it can't work like that. And I just, as long as people understand where I'm coming from, and I think my audience gets it. It's like, I'm just going to tell you and shoot from the hip. That's how it is. Like, I'm going to accept you and love you for who you are, but don't feed me the bullshit. I'm not going to participate in the bullshit, and leave the kids alone.
Yes.
Please. Like, I don't understand why this is happening. This is becoming a bigger thing in the last year or so. I mean, it's been going on for years, but I've become more cognizant of it. And I think generally a lot of people have become cognizant of it. It's like, stop with that shit. Like, I'm not, like, I don't understand what you're trying to do, but I just, so we can live in a world where we say like there are different lifestyles, different choices, different outcomes, but we can also live in a world where it's like nuclear family still is good. Doesn't mean you have to do it.
Yeah,
but it's
exactly.
good. You know, like, we shouldn't have kids out of wedlock. That doesn't mean you can't. It means you probably should try to avoid that.
Agree.
It's just that I'm not a big Ben Shapiro fan at all. But he does say something that is very true. He says something along the lines of, as long as you graduate from high school, don't have kids out of wedlock, and something like don't have credit or debt or something like that. You'll be fine. And and I just feel like it's just, let's get back to the basics. So like, we can kind of get an amalgamation of everything, but I'm not going to be fed bullshit. I'm too old for it. I'm not going to pretend. And so that's kind of where I stand on it too. So I sympathize with you.
And I like that, because I think that's kind of, we have to stand our ground with this kind of stuff, or we will get cry bullied into submission. And I think one thing that we've seen a lot lately, especially on social media and stuff, is that, you know, over the past few years, up until a couple of years ago, we were seeing where a lot of people were scared just to admit on social media that they may have voted for Trump, or disagreeing with any sort of nuance about anything. They were scared to even speak out on, because their jobs were on the line. And once you start seeing stuff like that happen, especially considering the other side of things and the whole social justice movement and all that, I feel like we do outnumber them, the politically correct crowd, as we normally used to call them. We outnumber them, but it didn't seem that way, because a lot of us, not everybody, but some of us were scared to even really speak out that much or share our opinions, because it was like, oh, am I going to lose my job? It took me getting canceled before I was able to really share a lot more of my opinions on stuff. But it is so important that we do stand our ground with this, and we don't let them bully us into having to agree with all of their narratives. The whole, like you said, with like, oh, there's 50 genders and this and that. We shouldn't have to play along with that game. We should be able to speak out and share our own opinions on it, and not be demonized for it. So, yeah.
I also think it's important to cultivate audiences that understand, and this is kind of the freedom of not being part of the monotype, is like, cultivate audiences that understand they're not going to agree with you on everything. I'm sure there are many people on Patreon right now that are listening to this, and this will be probably public at some point so we can see what the public thinks, but they'd be like, I don't agree with this at all. But they're not going to freak out about it because that's how we do it. And I think that's better than, like you said, ostracizing people. And like what you brought up, and we bring it up a lot on our show, it is a religion. It has its holy texts. It has its holy figures. It has its sayings and its prayers and its mores. It is a religion. And I don't understand how people can't see that. It speaks to the innate human desire to have something to believe in. And if it's not going to be a religion, that's fine, but it's going to be something secular. And this is a possibility. So
exactly. And the thing is something like that still requires a lot of faith, because when they want to talk about, it's all about facts for us, fact checker, this, that, and the other. Well, it's not, it's a fact that there are not 50 genders, so it just proves that it is a religion to them. And it's not just factual based like they want to act like. And it's just gotten ridiculously out of hand.
Yeah, I agree, because I can believe in this example, like A and B, male and female. I totally get it, right? Those two things exist. In between, I can get that too. And I think that about sexuality as well. Like I've always said, I don't think I'm totally straight. Like I don't think I'm 100% straight.
Right.
And I think there's like a barometer in which those things are measured. My problem is when you're trying to add a new dynamic to it. So it's like not some fluctuation between male and female, neither, both. It's a third thing.
Right.
And it's like, oh, what? Like society, evolution just created a third thing. Oh, and a fourth and a fifth and a sixth and a seventh. In time immemorial, these things have never existed outside of this binary. It always is attached to it. And that to me is like, isn't that just common sense? And it's like, live your life and do what you want, but please don't ask me to suspend disbelief about certain things as well. I don't think there's anything wrong about saying that. And I feel, as I said earlier about lesbian women, I feel worse for gay people right now, because what I always call the old gays, like the people I lived with in San Francisco, they're freaking out. I know they are, because I talked to them. They're not feeling this.
They are.
And because they don't understand where LGB and everything else coincided with each other and had the same goals, and how they have to suffer together and all this kind of stuff. So I'm glad that there are other people out there that are willing to talk about it openly, even if people draw different conclusions, as opposed to, like you said, treating it like a third rail. There are no third rails. I'm not living my life like that. And so it's just too bad that it's polluted. That kind of thought has polluted our gaming culture.
It has.
And it's kind of shitty, because you can't effectively fight back against it. And I'm not trying to tell people how to live. I don't really care how you live. I mean, it's up to you, but I don't know. Can't there be more balance?
Yeah, and you can't. And however individually we decide to live, we cannot expect society to all cater to us and how we choose to live. And that's just the important part to me. If somebody wants to make up a gender for themselves, they can do so. Great, more power to you. But they shouldn't expect society to have to cater to that. At the end of the day, there's still reality, and we shouldn't be expected to completely suspend that.
Yeah, I agree. And so I hope that the games industry becomes, through people like us, though we're not very big. I mean, there are bigger people, but I hope that like dissident conversation continues to happen to at least challenge conventional wisdom. And I think we've seen through some of these things to fruition. For instance, I think Anita Sarkeesian's a really good example of someone who just died out, and not literally, thankfully, I don't want anything bad after her. But I'm saying, like, her whole thing came and went, and it was meaningless and didn't affect or change anything. And she has no audience anymore, because it was all about grievance. It wasn't about personality or something substantive. And so I think if we give things enough time, this stuff will come out in the wash, but there's going to be real victims along the way. Because it's, as you said, you grew up a tomboy and you were pushed in this direction. My nephew is gay, but what if he was more effeminate? And what would people have thought then? Like, I just, it's scary. And
it is.
I don't like how like gaming seems to be a safe space, in quotes, for, I don't know, the destruction of norms. I don't know. They've
like reinforced stereotypes where, back in the 90s and stuff, we were taught like, oh yeah, you don't have to be just, there's no like box that you have to be put in. You can be a girl and still like to play video games or play in the mud or have short hair. And that was something I was just thinking of recently too. I was watching like some 90s and early 2000s movies with my family last week, and there were, you know, women who had like pixie haircuts and stuff who were still straight women. And it's like, you know, that's kind of nowadays, if a woman has short hair, then it's like, oh, she must be non-binary or she must be lesbian. It's like, what has happened now to these extreme stereotypes where you can't just be, you know, if you're a woman, you have to be extremely feminine. If you're a man, you have to be extremely masculine. Anything in between means that you're either gay or you are in the wrong body. And it's just made things a lot worse. And it's put everybody into these stereotypical boxes, which isn't good for anyone.
No, I agree. It's a self-reinforcing categorization that didn't even exist 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago. And it sucks because it discourages people from being themselves, but still remaining true. It's like I think there is a level of selfishness, but also a level of societal input that says, this is good. Where, of course, if you're a little kid and you're being told and you're seeing evidence all around you, oh, I'm going to get all these plaudits. And not that you would call it that at 5 or 6 years old, but I'm going to get all of this credit for being different. Of course, you're going to fucking want to be different.
Right.
Oh my God. Don't you? I mean, I don't remember that well being a really young kid, but I remember it well enough to know, like, you know nothing and you can be the sparkly thing can draw your eye and you have no reason to do half the things you're doing and no idea what you're doing. No idea what you think. No idea about the world. No wisdom. You don't know anything. And so, anyway, we went off on a tangent there, but I'm glad we did because this is Sacred Symbols Plus. We're allowed to do that. Melonie, thank you for joining me today. That was a really fun conversation.
Thank you.
Where can people find you and your content?
You can find me all over the internet at Melonie Mac, and then my newer YouTube channel, which I put more focus on video content wise, is Melonie Mac Go Boom on YouTube. Cool.
Very cool. Well, thanks again. Sorry we couldn't get together a few months ago, but again, I think it was serendipitous because we got the Tomb Raider thing in. We still got to talk about all the politics as well. You're welcome back anytime.
Thank you. This was fun.
Yeah, I'm glad you thought so. And thank you all out there for your love, kindness, and support of all things Last Stand, Sacred Symbols, all the rest. We'll see you next time. Until then, goodbye. Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast, is a product and trademark of Last Stand Media and Collins Last Stand LLC, and is proudly recorded in the USA. The show is conceived by, is written by, and is directed by me, Colin Moriarty. My co-hosts are Chris Raygun Maldonado and Dustin Furman. The show is produced by executive producer Dustin Furman. It's edited by associate producer Ben Smith. All of Last Stand's theme music is by my best friend, Ramon Narvaez. As you know, all of Last Stand shows, including Sacred Symbols, are fan-funded on Patreon at patreon.com/laststandmedia. The following names are at the producer level on Patreon, our highest tier, and we're grateful for your thoughtful and kind contributions to our independent endeavor. Thank you.